Hello again, everybody. I'm Larry Hamilton. Welcome to my YouTube painting channel. Thank you for watching. Today we're doing a watercolor demonstration that I planned to do last week, but I fell ill with some throat problems, couldn't really speak, and so it's not a good thing to try to do a video when you can't talk. So I've been on antibiotics for several days and I'm feeling pretty good right now, so I hope I don't have any coughs or sneezes during this video. If I do, I will be able to edit them out. I'm not doing this as a live broadcast, so it gives me a little more flexibility that way. So anyway, we're doing a painting today that's from a photographer that's a member of Pixabay, pixabay.com. It's a website for photographers and artists, but the photographs are free to use, and so I've actually contacted the artist on this particular photo and gotten his permission to be able to show it to you today and paint from it. Usually they don't have a problem with me painting from it, but showing it on my YouTube channel is usually something I prefer to get permission. Never had a problem with it, but anyway, his name is Jeremy Wilder, and this is a scene from Ecola State Park. It's near Canyon Beach, Oregon. And so Jeremy is from the Portland area, and if you want to see this photo on pixabay.com, just look up number 2759992. So that's the direct link to this photo. I also have it on my website, and you can download it. I have a sketch there as well that you can download, so you can maybe get started on this. I want to go through the paints and what I've done with this so far, and so we'll start that now. I have quite a bit of white, or well, masking fluid here. It turns yellow when it dries, but you can see on my palette here I have laying out some of the tools I've used already to get this painting started. I have used my liquid masking fluid here from Winsor Newton. I've put some of that fluid in a fine line applicator, which has a very, very fine point on it. I think you've maybe seen me use this before to get some very sharp fine lines on my painting in the terms of masking. I've also used a toothbrush to splatter some masking fluid. I've used a this little it's a tool. It's called a I forget the kind of tool it's called, but basically it's a shaper tool. So I've used this shaper tool to sort of move some of the masking fluid around, and it's pretty nice for that. You can dip it in and get some dots if you want it. And then I've also used just a regular flat quarter-inch flat brush to do some splattering as well. So I've got all kind of techniques going on here today, and I want to tell you that so you don't wonder how I got where I am and where that white paper came from, because I'm going to paint over a lot of this and I want to keep the white. I'm also going to use, in addition to my paints, I'll go around my palette here in a second, but I'm going to use some titanium white gouache, which is an opaque paint, and it basically will cover some of the areas if I want to cover up some of these and make some of this splatter look a little more realistic. That's usually a problem when you do seascapes, to try to get foam and that sort of thing right. So I'll be using that as well. So let's go around the palette now, and I will explain to you my colors. Once again, these are Holbein transparent watercolors. I have here Payne's Gray, Cobalt Blue, Ultramarine Deep Blue, and Royal Blue, Permanent Violet, Green Gray, Burnt Umber, Burnt Sienna, Quinacridone Scarlet, Bright Rose, Brilliant Orange, Quinacridone Gold, Permanent Yellow Deep, and Cad Lemon Yellow. So that's my palette. As you know, I've changed from Primary Blue paints to some of these, to this Holbein series. And I'm really liking it. The colors seem to be much brighter. They're very transparent as well. So anyway, that's what I wanted to show you. And I want to get going on this. I'm going to sort of move my palette around now so I can lay my camera over it, or my camera over the image we're painting on. And I'll get that going here in just a second as soon as I get this lined up. And there we should be about ready to go. Okay, so I can have my palette laying over the lower right hand corner, and it doesn't take too much of the real estate space. Okay, so let's get going here. I'm going to get some clear water. Excuse me, I'm still suffering a little bit from this throat issue I had just about 4 days ago. So put some clear water on here in the sky. This is a very beautiful photograph. Actually, it's nice and clear. There's almost no black in it, which is really good. So many cameras leave black areas that when it's dark, and if you try to paint that photograph, you'll be making a big mistake if you try to copy all that black color in your painting. So I'm just going to wet this very slightly at the top, and that's going to be enough to get us started. So my paint color I'm going to start with is this cobalt blue here. Cobalt blue is a good sky color. It's also good for seascapes. So I'm going to start with it up here in the sky and just see what we can get, if I can get a nice wash with it here. Darker at the top maybe, and we'll just sort of blend it down into these mountains, distant mountains back there. And I'm going to kind of let that dry, and I'll come back over it and put the mountains in after this dries a little bit. But I want to get a good coating on here, make it a little darker maybe on one edge like that. Don't want to mess around too much with these skies. You'll end up making them worse. So, and since all of this background, all these mountains are a blue shade, I'm going to just go all the way down here. All this will be covered with either darker or lighter paint, and try to do this. Okay, so there's it's not quite as graded as I wanted it, so maybe we can just touch one more line across the top to see if it'll darken that just a little. Let it put in some soft, since this is all wet, it's going to really leave some nice images there in the sky without having to do much more to it. The big problem is trying to know when to stop on your sky and get out of it. Some of these areas in the mountains are going to be going to have a little bit of fog in them. See if I can hit a few of those areas that we may want to be a little bit lighter color. In some of these areas, maybe like that. A little hard for you to see that maybe, but just picking up a little bit of the paint out of there. And we'll let that go right now. So I want to pick up some of my gray-green and mix it in with a little bit of this cobalt blue, and see if I can get some of that started here in these areas where I'm going to have some of these waves. I have this masking fluid here, and I want to try to make a little bit of a light shadow coming through there. Light, not shadow, but a light area coming through. I'm just going to kind of carry some of this on, use a little bit of water, thin it down, let it run together. We got some of this over here, should have some color in it. I'm not leaving a whole lot of white. Basically that white is going to be where the foam is primarily. You can see the masking here. Let's see, I want to make sure this is going to have a little bit of blue in it here. A little bit of blue, a little bit of green, kind of mix that together like this. Coming forward, it gets even a little more yellow in it as we get toward the, maybe it's more ochre, I don't know. As it comes down here in the foreground, it starts picking up this more of a greenish color even than it has in the water. And so we can put a little bit of that in here. We're going to leave a lot of this area for some white foam over here. I want it to be soft. I want these edges to be soft. I don't want them to be hard. So let's just kind of touch it in there with really light. So I'm leaving some room for near whites in there. It may not be totally white. It may not be total white paper, but it's going to be pretty white. See if I can pick up any of this. It's not going to pick up too well. Okay. So that's sort of the foreground in. I may come back and put a little dirt over that in some areas as I want to darken it down. But basically, that's the sky, and that's the underpainting for the distant mountains. So I'm going to get my hair dryer out now, and I'm going to dry this off so I can come back in with some more paint over that. But I want it to be dry before I do, so I'm going to shut off my microphone, and I'll turn it back on when I get this dry. Okay, got that going. All right, now let's go back. I'm using a 1-inch brush here. I didn't really talk about my brushes much. I've talked about them most of my other painting classes, so I won't bother you with it too much, but these are Sterling Edwards brushes. I have a couple of flats, a couple of rounds, a big bristle brush that I use sometimes, and some a script liner. So I use these pretty much exclusively. When you check your paper to see how wet it is, I'm using some ultra blue now, ultramarine blue. So I want this to come in with a bit of a hard edge up here on the top. So I'm just putting in this layer of mountains back here. Pick up more of a clear brush, and let's sort of filter out this hard line there. I don't want a hard line. This brush has a nice rough texture to it, so I can sort of scrub out those hard lines. That was left by my flat brush. Come back with the 1/2-inch flat now, and let's do a little bit, just slightly darker, just a little bit darker. Not much. Start up here. It's not quite dark enough. I can always go back over this if I need to. But I want to sort of darkest there, more dark up here, like that. And I actually got some over here I want to put in. That's a little bit of some sort of tree line or something going on back there, but it's giving it a little bit of a rougher texture. thin it out just a little bit, clear water, let it run. Gotta be careful I don't get blossoms up in there by putting too much water on top of it. Okay, how's that looking? Okay, that's got a little bit of a blossom going here. Let's see if we can straighten that out a little bit. Maybe even a little bit of a, pick up some of that paint over here and get a little bit more of a foggy bottom on it. It's hard for you to see that probably. All right, we're kind of following the colors of the photograph. I wouldn't have to do that, but I kind of like the way it looks. I'm going to put just a little bit of green in this and start greening things up just a little as we come forward. My gray green and my blue are going to give us a little bit of a grayed down color here. It's a subtle change. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it is a slight change. And I want this area on the left side to have a little bit of green in it. Let's see, back in here, same kind of thing. Probably too much green, but I can always lighten it up. This is sort of a row of trees going on back in here. This, like that. Some more blue in it. Darken it down just a little. Come down here. Let's see, we're going to put the top of this guy. So, a bit of clear water. Clear water. If you want it to look like mist under there, you got to kind of get that hard line out of it. You can't leave a hard line sitting there. And over here, I want to get some misty area over here as well. Okay. So now we got this other area in here that's got a pretty good size mountain. See if we can get a little bit of my ultra blue back. Coming in here, there's a nice little peak right there. Sort of stands out. Coming over this way. And I want to green it up just a little with some of my gray green. And over here as well. I'm just trying to get some nice looking mountains with some fog in between them to give you that depth. Every time you put another layer on, you're building depth. And that's what I want to do here, build depth. A little bit too blue, but let's bring it out. Okay. So it doesn't take a lot of time to do this. This is sort of just kind of fun, kind of warming up practice almost, I'd call it. If this wasn't on the Oregon coast, I think I told you it was the Oregon coast, in a place called Ecola State Park. That's near a town called Cannon Beach, Oregon, if you're familiar with the west coast of the U.S. That's where this was taken. Again, I want to thank the photographer Jeremy Wilder, who so graciously gave me the permission to not only paint it, but to overlay the photo on here and show it to you the whole time I'm painting, which is really nice for you to be able to see it that way. And because that helps you see where we're going, what we're doing, and hopefully how we're going to get there. So I'm going to put a little more, let's see, this thing, then there's another little dark thing here that comes across like this. So it goes down into the water like that. And put a few other colors in there, mix it up a little bit. Just trying to get some change of color, a little change of texture maybe. Got a rock sitting right back there. I'm painting around now, doing a little negative painting. A bit too dark, but it's going to bleed and blend into what's here. And then I've got a much greener here. I don't know if I want to go in there yet. I'm going to put some of this little mountain, sort of a greenish covered, I guess it's a rock actually, sitting up out of the water here. So it goes over and comes over this way, and then it's really got to be darker. Put some blue in there, we'll darken it down, put some shadows in it. It has some color change in it as well. I'm leaving some rough texture there, rough edges. Leave it a little bit rough. We are meeting up with the water down here, so let's put in a few more things in here. I want this to be clearly defined. I want this area here to be darker. I either want to have a white break in it, or I want it to be definitely darker, going down this way. So I'm letting some of this rough texture show up by just scraping the brush over the water, and it's going to give me a chance to put some more foam and that sort of stuff in there. It should be a little darker maybe right here, fading into something a little lighter. All right, so contrast, dark, light, dark, dark, light, dark. Think about that when you're trying to make these things that are almost the same color stand out from one another. You have to give it contrast. If you don't have enough contrast, the viewer is going to think you don't know what you're doing. So we have to fool the viewer. This is all optical illusions we're doing here. Okay, I have another dark. Get a little bit of this royal blue back here maybe, and see if I can put this guy in. And oh, I had one here I left out. It looks like I had one somewhere about right here. Maybe that's what I was supposed to be putting in right here. Needs to be darker there because you can't quite see it. So let's put it in very distinctly and make sure there's some dark contrast mixed with some light. Over here, same idea. I'm going to pick up a little of my browns now, get into some of my brown here. I'm using this small number 4 round brush, which is letting me do some interesting things back here in the background. I would normally just gloss over that very quickly with a big brush and leave it sort of abstract, but I want to try to make sure I can get some of this foam going on back here. And so I'm using this brush to make sure I've got areas that are lighter, soft areas, that sort of thing. All right, I think spent enough time back here. Put a little of that brown in here and just bring it down. And we'll let it mingle and mix so that we have a distinct difference. All right, so I've got some nice color change here. I got some interesting shapes here for these little rocks that are sticking up. Most of these rocks are sort of covered with something, moss or grass, I'm not sure. I've been to this area a couple of times, but I haven't been able to photograph this specific beach in this state park. So I was really happy to find this painting, this photo rather. All right, so much for that. Now we're going to start coming down and working on some of these. I'm going to get some of this. I still want to keep some of that green in there because I'm going to use that in some more of my painting, but let's see what we got here. I'm going to pick up a little bit different blue, this royal blue maybe, put it in, and maybe even combine it with this cobalt blue. Getting a little bit different color there by putting those two blues together. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so we got that foam, and we got these colors, and needs more green in that. Pick up a little of my green over here. Try to get some of this. This is a wave that's sort of coming this way. Now I'm trying to make the brush stroke go the way the wave goes. If the wave is going this way, I want the brush stroke to go that way. If the wave is coming this way, I want the brush stroke to go that way. It's an important secret that you need to learn and remember if you can. Another wave coming up, way up here like this. Kind of like we're repainting the mountains a little bit, isn't it? Let's put some more blue in here and get it going this way. All of this here is sort of going like that. I've got some rough texture in there. Leave a few little gaps in there if you can for some highlights. If you pull fast, you'll leave some over this rock again here. Pull fast, you'll leave some interesting shapes out there. Now this is where I want to get more of that green and even add some yellow to it in here. I'm going to try to make this, if I got the right color or not, but let's try it and see here. It's almost too green, but I'm going to leave it because I know this is going to dry. Now I'm moving the brush around like I'm doing a reverse letter C here. That is causing this curve to be there. And by giving it some variation in color, I'm able to help make you think that's a wave that's curving up, coming over. At least that's the plan. So make the brush strokes go like this, because we're coming this way, right? The water is flowing this way. It's actually, water's actually getting sucked up into that wave is what's happening, like this. So whichever way you can make that brush stroke the best, try that, do that. Over here I've got some more rough texture coming down, coming into some more blue. Where'd my blue go? Like this. It's probably a little too dark right there, but I'm going to leave it because I want that to be a definite indicator that we're coming down off of this wave. Okay, so now take some of this blue and just sort of push it in some areas here that we're going to have some of this white foam floating around. A couple of areas like that. Using rough texture, and I want this to go over that way. I think we've got a lot of white in here that we're gonna. Okay, so I'm trying to get a nice look of this just a few lines. If I put every line in there that is in there, I would drive you bonkers. I don't want to do that. I want to just hint at some of them. Impressionistic. Okay. That's close to the color I was looking for. A little more blues down here. I want to make sure I leave room. I got this rock. This is a lot of white foam in here. It starts getting darker somewhere in here. This area. I guess there's a bit of a gap for the white, all this white foam that's sitting there. So let's put a couple of streaks over here like this. I want to have something soft and all this across here. I want it to be putting just a little bit of a tone here to sort of tone some of this white paper down so that it's not completely bone white. And I can always come back and put more lines in it if I need to, but I want to get it toned down just a little. Even down here, I'm going to sort of run some of this water down over whatever I got here. Just like a glaze, pretty much. Okay, looks like I have a nice swell going on there. Okay, how are we doing? Pretty good here for time. All right, got this other rock here. I think I'm gonna pop him in. He's got brown in him. Give me this flat or round brush. I kind of like it's a small area to paint, so I'm going to sort of just put him in there and let him get some soft edges on the bottom and that sort of thing. Don't want to paint it in perfectly. I just want to leave it soft and put some darker on this edge because I think the white is coming from the right. So the right and left of this rock and the bottom of it's going to be darker than the top. So let's leave that. Okay, how are we doing? Is this drying up enough? I think I want to come back and put just a very light wash of color in here. I've got some darker color already on and dry. Let's put a light, very light wash of this, some of this blue here. Light enough it doesn't wipe it out. Okay. All right, so now we're getting down to areas where we're going to have to start putting in some more specifics. More specific things to make these waves appear a little better. Sort of re-hitting this over here. If you have a white area out there, you put something that's really dark behind it, you'll give it that pop. And then I want this to be nice and light. I want to lighten it up a little bit by taking some of the paint out, I think. You can just wet it with the brush, and this brush will pick paint up off of this surface. So I'm trying to give it a little bit of a texture in there with my paper towel. All right. Let's see here now. I'll touch up this rock back here just a little more. Make it a little bit darker in some areas. Want it to stand out. Add some more brown to it. And this one I'll hit him again too. Might as well do it while I've got this my brush. Let's see if I can make it just a little darker. Yeah, leave it rough and jaggedy on top. All right, I have a little bit of water in here that's going on underneath this guy. Sort of runs out there like this. Got a little bit of it. It's kind of smooth actually. Run him out this way. Leave some light areas back there for some more foam and some more. I haven't taken off my masking fluid yet, so I've got that to do. This is all pretty much white in here. I'm going to just put a few marks in there to give me something to work on with. Okay, picked up some brown there. I don't know where that came from. Probably from my finger. Okay. All right, so let's see if we're ready to take off some masking. I think I'm going to dry this one more time to make sure everything's dry before I try to scrape that masking off. Okay, so how do we take the masking off? Well, I have this masking remover tool. It's just a rubberized thing, and it just sort of picks that stuff up and rolls it up into little globs that you can peel off. Some of this has been on here for a few days since I was going to do this painting earlier in the week, and had to postpone my video that we've left. Got spots here that I've left. It's going to be white. And if I don't have enough white on it, I can come back with my white gouache and put a layer of gouache over it, which will give me some more areas that I can show foam in. Okay, I think I got that pretty well. I forget what these are called. I think it's just called a rubber pickup or something like that that you can buy at art stores. Pick up that masking fluid. All right, let's get going with this. So all of this up here is all foam, and I'm going to use my some of my gouache after a bit to try to get that done. But I want to see if I can put in just a few places here where I want some darker color on these, on what's going to be this top of the foam here. So I'm using some of my Payne's Gray, just putting a light, kind of a rough brush stroke here, and I'm going to hit that in some other areas as I bring it down, just to sort of reinforce the idea that this has got some shadows in it, and kind of help me do those shadows. Over here we got a little more. So I'm trying to make it not smooth. I don't want it to be straight across. I want it to be sort of jagged as the top of those waves would be, as you can imagine. But I want to sort of bring it down in some areas too. So I hope you get a chance to try this, because it's kind of a fun, these are fun challenges. I just seem to do my challenges in front of a video camera, which is, some people think I'm crazy, but it's fun for me, a bit of a challenge. Okay, well, so that's the top of the wave. I'm going to be pulling more stuff back there, but I'm going to, while I've got this fine brush here, I'm going to continue to sort of paint in some more things that sort of show you the shadow of this wave, and reinforce the curvature of it. Bring some blue back into it, maybe, that I kind of taken out. Color mix and Almost that yellow is almost too bright, really. Come back over that and just sort of tone it down just a little. Almost looks like a cliff out there, doesn't it? Let's just throw some splatter on it a little bit, because if we can loosen that up, looks pretty tight. I don't want it to be tight, I want it to be loose. Okay, it helps a little bit. Even over here I'll put a little bit of a splatter going over that way. Over here we're getting into some areas that I want to have some more foaminess here. You can actually see some of this area that I've pulled the masking off of. It's going to be lighter. Where's my little brush here? Pull a little something over here like this. So I want it to be watery looking. That's what I'm trying to do here, is get this to look watery. This is all so you see how that water, when you let that water on water, or you put the splatter water on top of that, it tends to give it a much more water looking surface, which is what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to give that something loose, something really that we didn't paint, we just let the water sort of do its thing. And that's sort of the beauty of watercolor. You can let those kind of things happen. And if you're not too afraid to throw them out there and let them go. I'm seeing more green and stuff floating around in here in some areas. Back in here maybe. Some coming down this way with some green in it. Got waves coming here. But see, if I leave them like that, they look sort of mechanical. But if I come back and just splatter a little clear water on them like this, some way, you can throw some water in there. Many ways to put water on. You can throw it, you can take your brush and with your finger and flick it like that, like I was doing there, letting it sort of spray itself on. So I'm getting this turbulent looking stuff going on there, which is what I like. You can't really quite paint that stuff. You just gotta let it do its thing. Showing you all kind of techniques here today. Put that over wet paper and you're getting very nice textures going on. The other way you can do that, I'll show you just an example. Since this is a demo, you can take your sprayer, a spritzer, and just sort of give it some things like that. It will pull itself down and loosen up your painting pretty significantly. So I'm trying to give it some more texture in this foreground here. Back here I've got some very plain areas. One of the complaints about using masking is that when you peel it off, you get these very, very sharp edges, which a lot of artists don't like. I mean, you're painting water, it should have a lot of some soft edges in it. And you get these hard edges, so you need to think about that with your masking and try to soften those edges up. That's why I started throwing paint around here, throwing water around. I'm trying to soften up some of these hard edges. Now that looks more, but it's just a couple of brush strokes and it looks more like foamy water. If I had a little bit of this taken out of there so it's not quite as hard. You want hard edges maybe at the top of your wave, but you want soft edges in a lot of other areas. So I'm working on soft edges. So we're getting quite a mixture of techniques here. I'm going to soften this edge here across the water. There's a lot of this stuff going up in this area. Again, I want this to be a little bit too much of a thing, so let's splatter a little more with some stuff. See this a little bit darker value here, I'm able to pop in some things that help make it look more blue in. Whoa, too much blue. And it's got different levels of drying, so some of it's really dry and some of it's not. Some of it's wet because I put the brush there and made it. And the closer you put the brush to the paper, the less splatter you'll have. If I hold it way out here, it'll go all over the paper. But if I get down really close like this, it will just hit certain areas. All right, let me see how we're doing. I'm gonna put just a little bit of this ochre color, some of this down here in the foreground to make it look like we're coming into shore here, which we are. I'll just throw a few things like that in here. Still leave some foam. Some nice areas that kind of see some shadow here and some of this stuff. The dark lines help give you shadows. So you want some of that. Don't want it to be all dark, or all light rather. And I'm trying to leave this area out here as open as I can. Clear, rough texture. You got tons of techniques going on here, folks. I think I'm about ready to get my gouache out. Been working on this for almost an hour, so I'm about finished. Get the gouache out here, and I'm going to sort of take it almost right from the tube and see how we can do with it. Actually, I'm going to use my 1/2-inch flat brush, and I'm just taking it right out of the tube here. Now this is an opaque, so when I start putting it on, it's going to cover anything that's under it. So I want this to foam up. Some of this, the wind is blowing this stuff like that. So I want it to sort of go up like this, which I'm trying to enforce. Pull a few streaks down into this so that we have a mixture of light and dark. I almost had too much light in there. Or I'm sorry, too much dark. I'm thinking backwards here today. But this gouache is going to give us some very nice looking wind-blown effects of this coming off the top of this wave. Like that. Now you're starting to see some of the see it kind of come together here with some of the white gouache texture. So a lot of that going on down here. I'm just going to scumble in some white gouache area in some areas here. It's going to give me some more of this foamy looking stuff. And I don't know if you saw that, but there's a nice example of using the brush to get these. It's really a dry brush technique where the foam just shows up out there from the side of the brush hitting the paper. I don't know if you can see that well, but that's kind of what we're doing here. This is almost the same technique that I would use on painting leaves on trees. You let the side of the brush pop out like this, and you're just getting all these nice effects. Even put it up into things like this where you want to show some splashes of foam. You have to use gouache or something like that for this, otherwise it doesn't show up over the dark. There is a transparent titanium white transparent color that can be used, but because it's transparent, it shows up a lot of what's underneath. So you end up with not getting a good cover on something like this. A little bit more here and we'll be about done, I think. I'm just trying to get a lot of texture flowing here to show you all this foaminess going on. So I kind of lightened this wave up so it's not quite as dark as I had it. I think that's pretty good. This area right here could be darker. Maybe I'll put a little bit of time on that just very quickly, like right in here. This needs to be darker. It's if I can get the right color. So there's some areas that are like, there's white and then it's really dark under here. It flows all the way across. It's got this rough top on it and flows more into the green as we come this way. More green, more green, more water. It flows over this way here. So I'm getting some foaminess here that I'm trying to mimic. Hard edge, rough edge. Just kind of closing this end off a little bit so it's not quite so light over here. More green in here probably. Yeah. So we got multiple kinds of waves going on, all kinds of turbulence. So what I'm trying to show is just a lot of turbulence going on here. And I think maybe a few soft edges here and there. A couple of streaks out in here to sort of tie some things together, maybe like that. All right, I could sit here and work on this for a long time, but I think I'm going to stop. I see an area here that could use just a touch of blue in this area. Just a little bit of shadowing going on in here. Over here, like that. Okay, that helps define that just a little better. Okay, folks, where's my script liner here? Let's see if I got a place to put my name, and I'll whip it on here and we'll be done. I think I want it right here, maybe. If I can get it wet enough. Let's go here. Right in here, let's... Okay, I think I'm going to call that quits for now, and I may touch it up just a little, but I think I'm going to settle with it pretty much that way. Okay, let's go in and take a look here really close. Okay, so that's a pretty good representation of the photograph that we have from Jeremy Wilder, and go out to pixabay.com and check out their photos out there. There's a lot of good photographers putting their work out there. Photos are free to use, and there's no copyright restriction, and I think it's worth checking out, particularly if you're always looking for subject matter and you don't have a lot of your own photos, you don't have the ability to get your photos. Check these sites out. There's a lot of free places. Facebook page has a Photos for Artists group. Plenty of photos out there. So I think that's all I want to show you today in this demonstration. I hope you like it. I hope you give it a try, and give me a shout out on Facebook. Let me know how you're doing, or a shout out on my YouTube channel also, and let me know how you make out on this. Check out my Facebook page and my website, and like I said, the sketch will be out there as well as the original photo that you can use, and I hope you have some good luck with this, and if you like my paintings, send your friends a note and tell them to check out my channel. I am trying to grow my subscriber base, and so I'd like to have a few more subscribers always, and certainly I thank you for watching, and thank you for being here. It sounds like my voice managed to stay alive here during this broadcast, and so I'm hopeful I can do my next live broadcast and not have to cancel it. If I do, there's a place in the community settings I can give you a message. I didn't give you a good message on canceling that last broadcast last week, so a lot of you didn't see it. Apologize for that, but I'll try to do better next time. So until I see you again, this is Larry Hamilton saying so long for now. Bye-bye.